Hello, family. How are you today? My name is Quanisha Johnson. I am a licensed counselor and educator, and I am very excited to bring to you today um, our session 4, and we are in our 4th theme as well. And we are going to continue our conversation in relation to relationships. We've talked about family, we've talked about our the Black woman, our children, and now we are focused and centered on the dynamics of our relationships with our partners. And so let's get ready and discuss our next session, which I will introduce to you momentarily. Let's share my screen. Okay. So here we are. So as I stated, we are in our theme 4, session 4, and our conversation that we have been going with is about fostering healthy relationships. And I'm going to repeat that word often tonight, as I have been these past few weeks, just the idea of we can have relationships, but the goal of the relationships are to be healthy relationships. So how do we achieve that? So every week we've been talking about something different in relation to having a healthy relationship. So today we're going to talk about just healthy ways to uplift one another, because that's what's so important. Last week we had this conversation about communication, and so today's conversation is about just lifting each other up. So love, I love this quote. Love is not just a word to say, it is an action verb. And so when we think about verb, we know it's something that you do. So with love and relationships, love is an action word. As I stated just a moment ago, it is something that you do. It is not merely just a feeling, something that you feel, because often in our partnerships, people are not going to make us happy all of the time. We're not always going to like what they say, what they do. And so if we based love on just a feeling, then we would be out of love with people all of the time. And so love is not just about what we say. It's not just about a feeling. It is about what we do. We show love. And this is just also a recap from our conversation last week about communication, our conversation about self-love that we had the week before that. So as we're talking today about uplifting each other, just wanting to kind of remind everyone as we're talking that another person does not define you. So today when we're talking about uplift and all of the ways that we uplift each other while we're in a relationship, this conversation is not about defining the person. It's not about the only way that person is going to be uplifted or happy or joyful or at peace is if they have this partner or this partner does X, Y, or Z. So just first, remembering that in relationships, if we're loving our partner, that it is an action word. And I don't mean something you do, meaning something you buy for them, but we display love and it's not merely or just a feeling. Then secondly, remember that although we're talking about uplifting, it doesn't mean that what we do defines someone else. Who you are is not defined by what someone else does for you. Next, your partner can add so much to your life, absolutely. But they're not responsible for your happiness. And I thought, like I said, to recap, this is from our conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago in regards to self-love. And so just wanting to just make that very clear that we are going to talk about how someone can add to, enhance, and just bring joy, but not the sole reason for it. And it's not their responsibility. Putting the responsibility for our happiness on someone else's shoulders is a very, very tall order that it causes so much problems because our happiness cannot come from someone else. We are responsible for our happiness. And then we talked about the idea of dependence versus interdependence. So often in relationships, partners get into these conversations or this kind of dynamics, this back and forth headbutting about being dependent, doing what I want to do. I don't need you. I don't need anyone. And so we don't want to even speak with that language. It's more so, it's not about needing someone. When you're in a relationship, when you're in a partnership, there's a level of interdependence. There is a level of two people are coming together, and there's something that you offer, there's something that you offer, and then we come together, and we're more powerful in that sense when we are knowing that you offer something, I offer something, and we are dependent on each other for those things. And it doesn't mean that I can't take care of myself, I can't financially support myself, I can't make sure that I'm good. It's just we're changing the language. We're reframing. We're not coming across in our relationship saying, I don't need you. We all in some way support each other and need each other. In our relationships, there is something, think about any relationship that you're in. It doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. There is a level of just symbiosis, right? There's a level of that I think makes relationships so important. So we see it as a one-sided thing, or I don't need you. I don't know that that language makes for a healthy relationship. I say is that we just need each other. There is something that you offer. We are, designed as human beings to serve one another in a way, and not in a way that we're less than, but just to offer up love, care. How can I help you? And like I said, not in a way that defines who the person is, and not in a way where I'm responsible, but I want to serve you in a way where I, as a fellow human being, want you to be okay, and I want you to want me to be okay. And I think of it in that way, and not in a subservient or less than type of way, but we're just all interconnected and needing one another in some way, shape, or form. Then the very, very important part that we talked about with self-love was communication. We said the communication was the foundation of relationships, and communication was the connector. Like, how do we come together without communication? How do we understand each other without communication? It's very, very important. And that communication involves us listening to one another. Not always being so quick. I think we are conditioned to believe that I'm going to say what I need to say. I have to say this. And oftentimes when our partner is speaking, we already have crafted our response. And if you're already crafting a response to what they're saying in line one, then we're not probably actually listening to what they're saying. So the art of listening, as well as verbalizing something, and understanding that communication can be nonverbal and verbal. So I just wanted to touch just the idea of love and relationships, what that looks like, as we continue to discuss how do we uplift each other in a healthy way. So I said the word uplift, and I love this word, and I'm going to define uplift. I always give definitions just to make sense of it and break it down. So Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, defines uplift as a verb. And when we think of it in terms of the verb, we're lifting up. Very simple. We flip the words around. And uplift is lifting up, elevating. It's to improve. I love this definition here. To improve. Remember in the last slide, it was we're not responsible for, but we can enhance, we can help, we can improve the spiritual, social, or intellectual condition of. How beautiful is that, to think that we have a part in a relationship to help someone improve. And when I think of improve, I think of just being better, because we all want to be better. We strive daily, even if every day it doesn't feel that way. We strive to be better in some area, in some way, shape, or form. We are individually striving for that goal. And there's so many barriers, and we've talked about that for the past few months, the barriers as Black people to us elevating, to us trying to improve our lives. So we've discussed the barriers, but also discussed the triumphs and things that we can do and things that we have done. So just thinking that when we're uplifting someone else, that we are helping, we're improving their spiritual, their social, and their intellectual condition when we're lifting them up. How beautiful is that? So that's why I wanted to use the word, uplift today when I talked about partnership and how do we do that in relationship. And then the word uplift as a noun is an act because it's a process, a result, or cause of. And remember earlier saying that love is an action. It's an action, is what we do. We lift up, we elevate, we're doing something. And when we look at it in the noun form, uplift itself is an act, right? It's a process, it's a result. It's something that we do. We can see the results of uplifting. We a few weeks ago talked about children and how we pour into our children. What do our children need? And when we uplift our children, it's a process. It's something we do, and we see the results of that, of pouring in. So when we pour into people, we can see the results of that. It also states that it's a bettering of a condition, especially spiritually, socially, or intellectually. So we are, remember, not responsible for, but we're enhancing, we're improving, we're being helpers. Absolutely. So the first step I wanted to talk about in this process, like, okay, so we know what uplift is. We know we are helping, we're improving the spiritual and social intellectual condition of another person, our partners, because we're specifically talking about our partnership, our relationship. But I wanted to bring it back to the idea of how do we do that? How do we uplift in a healthy way? One of the first steps is, which is so interesting, right? Because we're talking about someone else. What can we do to uplift another person? What we can do, very, very importantly, is to work on healing ourselves. And when we heal, we make sure that we're well, we restore. And there are so many, and not in everyone's situation is different. There's so many sometimes broken pieces that just need healing, that need mending. So I encourage everyone, if we're wanting to first and foremost think about how do we uplift our partner? How do we help? We enhance, we support them. We have to work on that self-love we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We have to work on making sure that we are whole people. Just even the idea of when people get married, we're coming together not as partials, we're coming together as whole. And the more that we are coming together in a whole state, in the process of healing, right? Then we can help our partners. We can help, we can support them, we can support each other. So we have to work on healing ourselves, and we have to work on our self-love. It goes back to the idea of the oxygen mask we talked about a couple of weeks ago with self-love. It's just the idea of making sure, like on the airplane, the flight attendant explaining the procedures. And if, the plane were to lose control, lose pressure, whatever exactly happens, that we don't want to happen when we fly, right at the top of your head, there's going to be an oxygen mask dropping down. And they encourage you first and foremost, before you can help someone next to you, even remember, and they don't say this in their explanation, but even if it's someone that you love, you want to make sure that you have your oxygen first. So I'm encouraging everyone in relationship to make sure you have your oxygen first and foremost. If you are suffocating, if you can't breathe, if you don't feel good, how do you help someone else feel good? How do you help someone else when they're needing oxygen? How do you help someone else when they're suffering? So it's very, very important we work on healing ourselves. And if we see something that we are struggling with, because what happens is, if we are struggling with something very specific, and I'm not talking about just day-to-day struggles that we just all in life go through, right? I'm talking about something deep, something traumatic, our trauma, or something that we have experienced as it relates to our families that have really impacted us and the way that we behave. And so ultimately, if we don't work on healing ourselves from those things, it is just challenging to be in a healthy relationship dynamic. And whether we're talking about a romantic relationship dynamic, even if you're a parent and it's with your child, if you are dealing with a level of trauma that you have not started the healing process, doesn't mean healing is overnight. It's a process. If we have not started that, we will find difficulties within our relationships. We will find those challenges even more, they're heightened, because relationships, they're hard, they're not easy, they're work. Love is an action verb. We're going to be doing, and not doing in a way where it suffocates you, it harms you. Absolutely not. If we are in harm, if someone's hurting us, then that is already off the bat not a healthy relationship dynamic. What I'm referring to is the fact that if you are not starting the process of your healing, it is challenging to work in the relationship. There's challenges within it because a lot will be projected on the person. And a lot of times the person that we are in closest proximity to, those are the people that get the brunt of our pain because they're right there. And so oftentimes it's just very important to make sure that we are healing. And we have to see healing as something that if we are needing support, that we get that support. If we need to get support from someone, and it's healthy and it's a good thing. So first and foremost, if we're talking about uplift, we're talking about first and foremost, before we get to that person, what do we need to work on? What are we dealing with? It's so very important to work on healing yourself. It is not an overnight process, but I want everyone who's listening to me right now to just think about and reflect on healing, because our partners, they will get it. There's something that we're noticing that we need support for, that we need to see our therapist for, who specializes in trauma work, that we need to work with our pastor on or talk to, whatever it may be, whatever your support system it is, or who they are in the process, to make sure that we're doing that first and foremost. So that's our first and foremost step. Now, everything else I name after this, there's no order, but I want to say in terms of order, the working on healing yourself is number one. It's priority. It is priority. And so everything else, you could swap the order out, you do it simultaneously, but first and foremost, the working on the healing of yourself. Work on whatever issues you have. I think it's very, very important. So let's see our number two, but that's not really in the order of number two. And so if we want to uplift in a healthy way, the important part is encourage each other. And remember, right now, when I'm saying each other, I'm not saying you if you are a man, you encourage more than the woman. If you're a woman, more than the man. I'm going to constantly say throughout this whole time together tonight, each other, encourage each other. When we encourage each other, we build confidence. We offer support, and we give hope. Hope is so very important, installing hope within people. Think about a time where you felt that you didn't have any hope, what that felt like. So I do believe when we are in partnership with one another, it's for a purpose, it's for a reason. It is for a reason. It is so that we could do this, we can encourage each other. It is not a competition. When you're in a relationship, I will repeat this, it is not a competition. We talked about this a few weeks ago, just for those who haven't seen the prior sessions, just the idea of the strong Black woman trope and toxic masculinity, two things or two barriers to healthy relationships. And we also discussed the idea of this conversation that's been happening a lot lately, really, with everything going on, all the racial injustice and just the devastation that our community has been facing. the idea of the Black woman feeling as though she gets no love and support from the Black man, the Black man feeling as though he, you know, he struggles, he doesn't get the proper support from the Black woman, and almost the conversation, you know, being, you know, it's a back and forth of who needs more support. You're not doing this for me. And I think it's important that we come together and that it is not a competition. We have all faced injustice, and some injustices are more evident than others. Some are more prevalent than others. But, you know, as a people, we have faced so much injustice. We have been dehumanized, and we don't want to be in a place where we have divisive language. We want to be in a place where we are encouraging and we are making sure that we are building confidence, supporting, and giving hope to one another. So when we are in relationship, we are not in competition. We're not like, well, my pain's worse than your pain. My trauma is harder than your trauma. My grief is deeper than your grief. It is not a competition. If we want to, as we're talking about, uplift one another, elevate, we want to help to build confidence and give hope. Hopelessness is just, it's really tough. We want to help support and help to provide hope. Because when someone feels that they have hope, they feel they can conquer. And so we want to, while in a relationship dynamic, we want to encourage each other. We want to be mindful of what our words are, because our words have power. Telling our partner that they are successful, that they can do it, that they can overcome. Speaking that life into them is so, so very important. Once again, not a competition. It's not your pain's more than my pain. It's not me trying to one up you. And so ultimately just remembering, what are we going to pour into each other when we're in a relationship, in a healthy relationship? Our words have so much power. What we pour in determines what comes out. What you're pouring in determines what comes out. It's so important to think of it from that standpoint. Encourage each other. Appreciate each other. Appreciation, I believe, has two parts to it. It's twofold. So we don't just say, you know, we're appreciating something, right? Ultimately, you must first recognize the value, worth, and importance. So once again, in partnership, I'm putting it on the individual first. So with the reason why I said it's twofold is that the person, the individual, must take time and reflect in order to recognize that that person has value, they have worth, and they have importance. And of course, the person on the receiving end, we're not waiting, we're not determining our own value and worth based upon someone else recognizing it, but it is important. It does enhance, it does build up, it does uplift. So we individually, when we're wanting to be in a healthy, and I'm repeating that word, like I said, all throughout, if we're wanting to be in a healthy relationship dynamic, we must first recognize the value, worth, and importance of ourselves, of course, but in our partners. We must take time and reflect on that, because we might miss something. We might miss something because of intergenerational patterns, things, belief systems, things passed down. We may see our partners and go, this is what our partners are supposed to do. Their value is connected to this thing, this behavior, this action, this amount of money. And if they don't meet the category here, they're not valued as much. Their worth is not as great. They're not of great importance. But I'm challenging everyone listening today to first, in order to appreciate, to individually, you must stop to recognize the value, worth, and importance of the other person that you are in relationship with. You got to recognize that. We don't just say appreciate. We don't just say it. It's not a word we just use. We got to recognize it, that person has value, worth, and importance, and understand that concept is really important. You must demonstrate, this is the second part of it. So I said, first is recognizing, it's reflecting and recognizing. It is slowing down and taking time to recognize. And we all are in different relationship situations. So it could be something small, it could be something big, but don't lose sight of it. Sit still enough and reflect enough to look at what that is. And someone's value, worth, and importance is not based upon money. It's not based upon superficial things. So we first recognize and then we demonstrate that recognition. Because me sitting there and just thinking I appreciate someone and they never knowing it, I don't know that that helps my partner. I don't know if that uplifts them if they never know. I can think it, I can write it in my journal, but if I don't demonstrate it, and I utilize demonstrate because it could be through the power of the words, it could be through an action, but it is ultimately demonstrating. And the more that we get to know our partners, we understand how they need that to be demonstrated. It's interesting. There's a lot of conversations about love languages. I hear like so much, even my clients, talk about understanding what their love language is, and then asking, like, do you know your love language? And based upon the whole idea in the book about the 5 love languages. And so it is important, not that we base everything on those specific things, but I do like hearing people say that they have an understanding of how they desire to be loved, like what speaks to their heart. And so I think in terms of appreciating each other in demonstrating that. So remember, first recognizing, second demonstrating, just understanding what our partner is in need of. And you know how we do that? How we learn what they're in need of? That word, that C word from earlier, which is communicate. And not just assuming someone knows what you need. And it's a different story if you're explaining to someone what you need and they're just simply ignoring you. But I say first, you got to try. We can't, if we are in a healthy relationship dynamic, we can't go, well, they should know. They should know I like this. They should know. They've been around me for 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. Why don't they know I like X, Y, and Z? If you've never told them, I mean, sure, they could know, they should know, right? Probably, maybe, but it's very important that we communicate. So recognizing someone's value, worth, and importance, and then demonstrating the way that it needs to be demonstrated. So demonstrate accordingly. So we need to appreciate each other. It really, really is important. Even when I get great service on the phone, I'm calling a place and I'm not in a relationship with the person, the customer service, but if they really, I do appreciate great service. And every opportunity that I get on that phone before we're hanging up, and they've gone above and beyond, they've exceeded my expectation, they really want to help me, I make sure to tell them, not that I appreciate it, because what is it? I tell them, I appreciate you. And then I tell them the reason. I appreciate you, customer service agent, and then the reason that goes behind it. That goes a long way. Because I could say I appreciate it, but what is it? So I'm only giving that example to say in relationship, when we appreciate each other, recognize the value, worth, importance, and then the demonstration of what that looks like. Appreciation often drives people to do their best. And remember, everyone's different. Everyone's different. But we're talking about healthy today. We're talking about healthy, and if you desire to be in a healthy dynamic. And if there is no appreciation, if there's no encouragement, if there's no communication, that's not healthy. So I challenge everyone in a situation where those things don't exist to do some reflection and examination of self first, not relationship first, but of self first. So appreciation just pushes, encourage. We said that word encouragement. People want to do more. So when I tell that customer service rep, they're great, and this is the reason, they want to hear more of it. So they're going to do that again. They're going to try to perform at that level because they want to duplicate that. So it drives people. We want our partners to be their best. Then we want to make sure that we demonstrate that appreciation because it'll drive them to do more. And so now we show affection to each other. Affection is connection. So we show affection in different ways. Everyone likes different types of affection. Affection is all levels, but the way we talked about communication is connector, so is affection. We connect to one another, and you have to determine, and it goes back to that self-reflection. I have had people that I've worked with that don't like to be hugged, and they're able to, in therapy, pinpoint their lack of affection, the lack of receiving affection in childhood, and make that connection as to why they may struggle to want to hug their children or want to hug and touch their partners. And so they're able to start the healing process once they recognize, like, wow, I made that connection as to that's why it may not feel as organic for me, because I didn't come from a family who was affectionate. And so that work is so important. And that's why step one, remember, every other step thereafter can be simultaneous. There's no 2, 3, 4, but number one is healing yourself. And so affection, when we demonstrate some level of affection, and it's knowing what our partner needs, we're communicating with each other, we're understanding, we're listening, we're learning, we're paying attention to the non-verbals. Affection is connection. We connect that way through a level of affection that works and for our partners, for each other. It's a requirement for healthy relationships. Like I said, everyone is different and they demonstrate affection in different ways, but it really is, in some way, shape, or form, it is a way, like, to have a healthy relationship. And people desire it. They may not know that they need it, or they may struggle with it based upon prior experiences of trauma, of those, like I said, those patterns that are passed down, and growing up in a family. But overall, it's something that is needed for a healthy relationship. Some level of affection is how we show, it's a part of how we show people, that action verb, how we show people that we care and love them. So let's see. Next, we are saying show empathy to one another. Showing empathy, so important. It's not feeling sorry for someone. So no matter what our partner is going through, they don't need us to feel sorry for them, because when you're in a relationship, someone will go through grief, they will struggle, whether it's at their jobs, and they're going to come to you as their support system. But it's not about us feeling sorry. That's not what empathy is. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings. We want to understand. We literally want to, and we can't literally do it, but we want to, as much as possible, put ourselves in that person's shoes. Just envision, reflect on, like, what if that was me? So when we're in a situation where we can't understand where our partner is, where are you coming from? I don't understand. We need to try to understand. We need to, we might say, I don't know why they feel like that. Why are they responding that way? And we need to try to put ourselves in their shoes. If I were in that situation, how might I feel? If my partner is explaining to me that an action may have made them feel neglected or hurt, I don't need to hone in on this exact situation, but I need to put myself in the shoes of feeling neglected or hurt, because you may not be able to correlate the situation, the behavior, or the scenario they give you, because you may not get that part. You may be like, for me, if I didn't call you to say I made it home, okay, what's the big deal? So you may kind of focus in on the not calling part and not get it and lose sight of it. But the part you need to hear is that I felt neglected and hurt. So then we don't put ourselves in a situation of, well, I don't care about calling somebody, when I get home to say I'm safe. It's not a big deal. I'm safe. You would know if something happened to me. It's not that part. The part we're empathizing with is feeling neglected, feeling hurt, which at some point in life, if you've never been neglected or felt neglected or hurt, you will. So we empathize with that part and we say, I don't like feeling that way. Someone that I love and care about, I don't want them to feel that way. So although that situation, I can't connect to that and make sense of that, I can connect to and empathize with and put myself in the shoes, understanding not wanting to feel neglected and hurt. So as a partner, what can I do better? How can I help? How can I support? How can I encourage? That's what we do. But if we put ego first, I don't get it. If we standardize ourselves and go, well, I don't get it. I don't see it that way, and make myself the standard. And if I don't see it that way, then it doesn't make any sense. Then the healthy part is out the door. So we're wanting to show empathy, understanding, trying to understand, trying to share in those feelings. And it's hard. It's hard to teach empathy. You can't have a class of empathy. I don't know. That's the challenge, but it's very important to do that. So we're uplifting. If we feel that empathy or we understand, then we can better encourage, better support. We can do that. Absolutely. Let's see. So important. Like I said, these aren't in any specific order. Depending on you and your circumstance, you might be number one. If my partner wants to lift me up, elevate me, help me to feel good, they have to respect me. You put the order the way that you choose. So when we're thinking about respect, that word, we hear that, the late great Aretha Franklin, RESPECT, we want to be mindful of not name calling, not criticizing, not ignoring. We don't want to ignore anyone and not listen to them. Comparing. I want to stop here because we know we shouldn't name call. We know we shouldn't be big on being so critical of someone else. We know we should pay attention and make sure we're listening, because that shows respect. If you are telling me something and I'm like on my phone, I'm not hearing you the way that I need to. Comparing. Comparison can be the thief of joy. And so we don't want to look at social media, #couple goals. I see that all of the time. Be in the la la land or dream world of someone's snapshot and then begin comparing our partners. That's not respectful of who they are. We don't want to compare, because our partners, the people we choose to be in relationship with, ourselves as individuals, we are individuals. And comparing steals the joy in the relationship, because you are with who you're with. You're not with person A, B, C, D. You're maybe with person E. So we want to show respect by respecting someone's name, not being overly or hypercritical, listening to them, not comparing them to others. I don't have it here, but we don't want to be bitter and resentful. That's how we show respect. Very importantly, we want to take responsibility. I think this is so important. Taking responsibility, ownership, accountability. Even when we set boundaries, that is a form of taking responsibility. Even when we talk about many times about when we communicate, we utilize an I statement. We say, I feel this way. Then we say, when you do this. That is taking accountability and responsibility for how you feel. When we set boundaries, we are taking accountability and responsibility for those lines that we draw for ourselves. Boundaries are not for the person, even though you give people boundaries, they're for you. And we're taking ownership and responsibility of that. And that's so important. So when we take responsibility in a relationship, We take ownership of our parts. You in a relationship can only do your part. You can't do someone else's part. And a lot of times people spend time trying to do someone else's part and they lose sight of what their part is. I don't know that I can do your part, but I could work the mess out of mine. I could craft it. I could change it. I could reflect on it. If I need help with it, I could go to someone and go, help, show me, like, how I could do better. That's my part. But your part, I can't. I can't. I can encourage you. I can support you. I can appreciate you, but I can take responsibility for my part, and that's the best I got. And I believe that if we encourage, support each other, and nurture each other in a way, I think, and then make sure we're doing our part, I think that right there helps the person and encourages the person to do their part. So we want to take responsibility for our actions. So for your actions, so for what you do, if you did something, don't spend time trying to deflect and focus on what someone else did. Your part for your actions, your actions. So yes, someone else may have a part, but what's your part for your actions? Then we want to take responsibility for our words, for your words. What do you say? What did you say? Were your words respectful? Were your words based upon harming someone else? Because hurt people. We hear that, and it really is true. When we're hurt, we and it, like I said, this is not every single person. When people are hurt, they hurt other people. It's a defense mechanism. It's a way they protect themselves. So taking responsibility, this is how we're uplifting our partner. We're not saying, we're not going to put everything on their back, because if we do our part, that's how we elevate and lift them up and encourage them. We encourage them to do their part because we're doing our part. So we're talking about uplifting and it being healthy in a relationship. I'm going to take responsibility, and I'm not going to say everything that I do, you're not the scapegoat. I would have done this, but you did this. Oh, I only did this because you did this. Take responsibility and accountability. So we want to uplift. We don't take everything that's not that person's, and we don't project everything onto them. We look at and reflect on our part. We absolutely are able to point out what our partner is doing to harm us and what we need to be done differently. But we must take responsibility for our actions, our words, and very importantly, in a relationship, we will make mistakes. That's why it really is important to take the time. If you're in a relationship dynamic, if you are a couple, you're going to disagree. And so ultimately, if you disagree and you say or do something that is of harm to your partner, you may not agree, remember, with the part, but if you're empathizing, which I said earlier, uplifts, if you're empathizing, you're looking at the part of harm. You're putting yourself in those shoes because you don't want to be harmed. You don't want to be hurt. You don't want to feel sad. And so you're putting yourself in the shoes of what that person might feel like. And if you both do it, and remember, this is not a one-sided, like Black man, Black woman, or, one of color, man of color. We're not doing that. We're talking about relationship. So if you're needing to apologize, reflect, do your part, take responsibility for your part. Yes, the person can be wrong too. But if you're both doing your part, you're both apologizing. It's not one-sided. Remember, when you are in a relationship, you're on the same team. It goes back to, this is not a competition. It's not who's more oppressed than the other. It's how, if we're seeing that we are at odds and that we are butting heads and that we're not supporting one another, what do we need to do? Because we're on the same team. And it's that saying that I've seen so much online. It says, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? When you're in a marriage or you're in a committed relationship, Is it about being right? Or is it about just coming together, figuring out what we need to do, apologizing if you need to, taking responsibility for actions, for your words, because you're on the same team. So when you uplift your partner and they're encouraged and you show them appreciation and they want to do better, that is remembering you're on the same team. You're not on separate teams. If you're comparing your partner to someone else on another team, remember, it's not helpful. And I'm not a sports person, but I'm thinking about like just, two opposing teams. You're wanting your partner to be like the other person on the other team. You're trying to win, right? So the two of you are on the winning team, the team for each other. So taking that responsibility is so important. And I know I'm not simplifying this journey, because relationships are work, because love is an action word. It's not just a feeling. Remember, it's not something we feel, because feelings fleet, they change. Today I feel this way, tomorrow something may change. But if we are to be in a healthy, I'm not talking about abusive in any way. This is all negated if we're talking about any form of emotional, physical, mental abuse. This is all, we're not trying to nurture that. We're working through healing and leaving those situations. We're working to get out of those situations, where if we don't know how to get out of that, we're just going to someone that will support us and go and help. And so ultimately, this conversation is for fostering a healthy relationship, not being at odds, at odds at all, but coming together, figuring out how do we uplift one another? How do we do that? And if we haven't done so, what do we need to do? Asking that partner, that person, what do you need? What do you need? And then right, it's reciprocated, because reciprocity. So what do you need? What can I do? I know I don't define you. I know my encouragement is not, defining who you are as a person, but I want to encourage and appreciate you. And so that is so important, taking the time to do that and having patience with this process, because relationships are work. And so it's that time where we are going to do some reflection activity. And so, of course, get your journals out, something to write with. And this journal is going to have a couple of parts. So this is what I want you to do, because we're talking about relationships. And I want you, everyone listening to this may not be in a dating or marriage relationship, but I want you to think of someone that you are in relationship with. And we have multiple relationships in our life. We have a relationship with our child, with friends, with our mothers, our fathers, our cousins, brothers, sisters. So if you are in a committed romantic relationship, you can use your partner. Otherwise, because relationships, we are fostering healthy relationships, you can utilize anyone that you want to use. Think of someone that you're in relationship with. So that's your first reflection. Just think of that person, bring them to mind, and list 3 reasons that you appreciate them, because we talked about appreciation. And appreciation, what did it call for? It called for recognizing the value, worth, and importance. And then I told you it was twofold. So the second part was this. For each reason, you provide the example. And then this is the part that's important. I want everyone to get the courage to share this with the person that you are in a relationship with. So whoever you chose. So you're going to first think of the person, think of 3 reasons that you appreciate them. And then for each reason, I want you to give an example of that reason. Give an example. So like, I appreciate, you picking me up from school. Like, let's say you're a college student. I appreciate you picking me up from my dorm at the end of each semester. Right? So I really appreciate that, because I would have no way to get back. And I know you take your time to do so. Second, I appreciate the time you take to cook meals, even when I know you're so tired from working all day. Second. Third, I appreciate the fact that when I am feeling down, you always have an encouraging word for me. Like last Wednesday, when I was upset about something at work, you told me that I was great at my job and that I don't need to worry about those people because you're so loved here in this house and we appreciate what you do. I made those up for 3 reasons. And so we don't want to just state it in our journal. We want to then take that next step because I want everyone to get into the practice of just being able to be communicative with the people we care about. So share this with the person that you're in relationship with. Tell them, I just sat through an hour of a conversation about uplifting and relationships. And we talked about appreciating and the importance of in a relationship showing appreciation, and that appreciation was twofold. And so I want to share with you, person I'm in a relationship with, 3 reasons, and I'm going to give you examples why I appreciate you. That's so important to do. So think about it, reflect on it, write it down first. It's important that we do that. Remember, we don't just keep it in our head, right? We share it. We demonstrate it in some way, shape, or form. So, but today I'm asking you to share that with that person. I think that would be so, so important to do. Okay, so we are now at a part that is very bittersweet. It's the end of our conversation about uplifting each other. So we're talking about relationships. This is the last session about relationships. Go back and watch the other 3, listen to the other 3, where we talk about different dynamics to foster healthy relationships. Our relationships are so important with each other. I know we are strong, we say we're independent, all of those things, but we need each other. We love each other. And we want to have healthy relationship dynamics. And so, as always, wanting you to remember this, that I say every time I'm here, to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Next step, right? Because you can't take care of each other unless you do that oxygen mask first. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and be well. See you next time.